Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. On this week's Game Day edition, we'll be joined by Michigan and NFL great Jon Jansen to recap the IU double overtime win and look ahead to a dangerous road trip to Happy Valley. First, my view from Section 17. I think I paced the floor every second of Saturday's IU game. I just never had a feeling we could put it away. Indiana has one scary offense, on that I think we can all agree. And I sort of had the vibe that it would come down to who had the ball last. And it did in the second overtime. It was another week of finding a way to win, and we did. That is the biggest difference between this and last year's team. We struggle, we make mistakes, but we don't let it stop us from fighting every minute and every second of the game, until the clock strikes zero. That to me is the Jim Harbaugh effect. He will not let this team stop fighting. We'll need that spirit and mindset in the next 2 weeks. This week we make our last road trip of the season to Happy Valley. Penn State is well rested and coming off their bye week. It's been a pretty good season for the Nittany Lions. They are 7-3, having lost to Temple, not a bad loss now, Ohio State, which was expected, and Northwestern on the road, which maybe was one that got away from them. They need a signature win for this season, and beating Michigan would give them that. It's senior day, a whiteout, the last home game, and it will be a crazy atmosphere. Michigan great and current host of the Tailgate Show on the Michigan Football Network, Jon Jansen, joins me next on our Game Day edition here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. With us today on our Game Day segment as we take a look back at the IU game this past weekend and then look ahead to a big road game against Penn State on Saturday, Michigan great Jon Jansen. Jon, wonderful to have you back.
Hey, it's always good to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Well, Jon, it was another nail-biter on Saturday down in Bloomington, but in the end, it was a win.
It was, and that's what the only stat that really matters, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. I think that game ended up taking a little over 4 hours, but it ended up in a Michigan victory, and we're at 8-2, and got everything that we want to do right in front of us.
Well, it was another impressive performance from Jake Rudock, who is really getting better and better each time out now, John, especially that timing with his receivers, and we saw some long balls on Saturday.
We did, and that was really the first game where we saw him connect with anybody downfield. And Indiana, while it's great to see them connect downfield, Indiana secondary was the weakest link of their team, and they exploited every time they could. So it was good to see them be able to take advantage of a weakness, and then also turn one of our weakest assets into a strength for the day. And hopefully that confidence will carry over as we look forward to Penn State and Ohio State.
One of the things you have to like too, John, is the way that Jake Rudock sees the field. With his experience, he's spreading the ball around now. We're seeing Jake Butt getting receptions, Jehu Chesson really coming on, and Amara Darboh steady as usual. So he's spreading it around.
He is, and he's actually throwing it to his fullbacks as well out of the backfield, which adds another element to what Tim Drevno's trying to do. And Jake Rudock, I think, is, when he started the season off against Utah, he'd only been in the offense for 6 or 8 weeks, and that's not long enough at any level to get comfortable with an offense. And even 1 year is not long enough to be able to master an offense. But you can see him develop week in and week out and get better every week in terms of, I think when he gets to the line of scrimmage now, and you can see him looking at the defense, he's starting to decipher, what in his first couple of reads, if they're going to be open or not, and if the pre-snap read is that they're not going to be open, he's able to check and go through and get to read 3 and 4 a lot faster. And you only got so much time in the pocket, and early in the season he'd get through one and the first and second read, and then the clock would go off in his head, and he'd either get out of the pocket or throw the ball away. Now he's starting to get to all of the different receivers and all the different options that are available on each play, and he's really spreading the ball around, and it makes it, the game slows down for him, and it makes him much more comfortable in the pocket.
Well, John, fans are still worried somewhat about the running game, but when you look back at last Saturday, we were facing one of the worst secondaries in college football. We really had to focus on that and take advantage of that, didn't we?
Oh, we did, and honestly, it's a little bit amazing to me. Out of all the plays we had, throwing the ball 46 times seems like a lot, and we could have thrown it 70 times, I think, and been very successful. So you got to take advantage of what other teams are giving you, and they were giving us the passing game and some of the deep passes. Now, when you look to Penn State, one of the reasons that our rushing game hasn't been very good is because we haven't been able to attack downfield. Even early on in the game, Indiana was putting, an extra man or an extra 2 guys in the box to stop the running game because they knew we were going to try and get that going. Now that we've shown that we can, Jake Rudock over 2 weeks now has been able to show that he can start spreading the ball around and start attacking downfield. Maybe we can get that extra guy out of the box, which should open up some more rushing lanes for our running backs.
Well, John, I was surprised when Minnesota ran the ball well against us a couple of weeks ago, but what Indiana did on Saturday was just amazing to me. Their young tailback, Josh Howard, is the real deal, isn't he?
He really is, and he's been successful against every defense that he's faced this year. I mean, against Iowa, one of the better run defenses, I think they'd only let up 85 yards a game on average. He went for about 174, 176 yards on them, and and the reason that he is one, he's a good back and he has good instincts. You saw him on Saturday night, being able to, he's very shifty. He does a good job with the spin move of avoiding tackles. And he also does a great job of getting the edge. But I think one of the things that most people miss is that Indiana's offensive line is pretty darn good as well. Jason Spriggs, their left tackle, he's a senior. He's a 4-year starter. Dan Feeney, Jr., he's got NFL potential written all over him. He's a very good player. And, you go down the list of, they got a center, Jake Reed, who's a senior. They've got good experience, good players. They played together for a long time. And, that allows them to be very effective in the run game, and pair that with a back like Jordan Howard, and they're very good.
Can you imagine if IU had even a halfway decent defense to complement that offense? Their season would be totally different right now, wouldn't it?
It would be, and that's the one thing that the knock on Kevin Wilson is that he can recruit a lot of great talent on offense, but they don't seem to put their resources or they're not able to attract any defenders. He's been there for 4 or 5 years now, and the offense is where he wants it to be, but the defense is still, what's holding him back. And if they could ever pair that offense, because it's a high-powered, fast-paced offense, and it's about the only offense like that in the Big Ten that runs with that pace. You pair that with a good defense and look out. I mean, they took Ohio State to the edge, a number 1 team. They took Michigan State all the way to the end of the game. They took Iowa to the end of the game, and again Michigan. So they've played 4 opponents in the top 15 and had a chance to win all of those games.
And it makes you wonder if Kevin Wilson's going to, he's got 5 years. Is he going to be given a chance to shore up that defense? Because the offensive firepower, I know that they're going to be missing Sudfeld, but they have Xander Diamant behind him. There's some pieces there for this program.
They are, and I would be very surprised if Indiana let him go. Like I said, they've been in all 4 games of top 15 opponents, and a program like Indiana, it's tough to recruit there. It's tough to attract good coaches there. They've got a very good coach, and they've got good players on offense. Now, Kevin Wilson just needs to pair that, and put some of his resources into the defensive side of things, and they'll be very good. And they still have a chance to make a bowl game. They haven't won a Big Ten game yet, but they won their first 4 games of the season, and they've got I forget who they play this week, but I know they got Purdue at the end of the week or end of the year. So they still have a very good chance. And maybe they got Minnesota this week. So they've got a good chance of still making a bowl game.
Well, with our Center Michigan Game Day segment this week is Michigan great Jon Jansen. John, yesterday on Inside Michigan Football, Jim Harbaugh said he was very happy with the win for a lot of reasons, especially given the fact the team is thin right now at some positions and maybe a little bit tired at this point in the season. Something tells me, though, they're going to find a little bit extra in that tank for the next 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things he's probably going to point out is that every game is a championship game for these guys. It's not every year. You'd like to say every year, yeah, we're going to be playing for a championship, but that doesn't always happen. You can't predict what injuries might happen. You can't predict, different fluky things that'll happen. And like, the Michigan State game, who would have thought that we'd have dropped a punt and lost that game at the end of the season? And right now they have a chance if they win out, because I believe that Ohio State will beat Michigan State this weekend. They're going to be in the Big Ten championship game, and you don't get that opportunity every year. So he's going to point out the fact that, hey, you got to take advantage of the opportunities that you have today, and that's to go to Happy Valley and beat Penn State and put yourself in an even better position when you face Ohio State at the end of the season.
Penn State is 7-3. They're coming off a bye week, late in the season bye week. It's their final home game of the year, so it's senior day. It's their only whiteout of the season. It is going to be one tough environment, John.
It will be, and they have yet to lose at home. I think it's been since I was reading. I think it's 2008 since they've had an undefeated season at home. So, there's a lot of reasons for Penn State to play very well this week, and I'm sure they will. And that's one of the great things. When you come to Michigan, you know that week in and week out, you're going to get everybody's best game. It's just like Indiana. The fans, they were ready to rush the field. Minnesota, they were ready to rush the field. Michigan State, you saw what they did at the end of the game. There are so many teams that if they can beat Michigan, it makes their year. And I guarantee you, having started off with the loss against Temple, and they haven't really had a marquee victory yet this season. If they can try and muster one against Michigan, it's going to make their season. So that's one of the challenges when you come to Michigan. You're going to get everybody's best punch.
Well, this year's Penn State offense isn't explosive. It's been getting better as the season has progressed. We know about Christian Hackenberg, but as the season has gone along, they now have some other weapons to worry about, John.
They do. They've been able to develop somewhat of a run game. And when you talk about Penn State, you have to talk Christian Hackenberg and his ability to spread the ball around. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he'll make a very good NFL quarterback. When you look at their receivers, Deshaun Hamilton, Geno Lewis, Chris Godwin, he's able to spread the ball around a lot. And if he can get time in the pocket, that's the one thing where they've really struggled is up front in their offensive line. Giving Christian Hackenberg enough time, enough confidence to be able to stand back there. So what Michigan has to do is there's going to be times where Michigan's going to rush 4 guys, and they have to be able to get pressure on Christian Hackenberg with those 4 guys because he is such a good passer they're going to need everybody in the secondary bringing their A-plus game and dropping those linebackers and having an extra nickel and even a dime guy in there at times to defend against the pass.
Well, we'll need continued good play from Jake Rudock in the offense this weekend because unlike Rutgers and Indiana, Penn State has a very good defense. We're going to have to be more balanced this week, aren't we, John?
We are, and that's going to be the challenge. You know, when you look at Penn State's defense, the strength of their defense is their defensive line. Anthony Zettel is one of the top defensive tackles in the country. He's actually a Michigan product, came out of, I think, the West Branch area. Carl Nassib is a very good pass rusher. Garrett Sickles on the other side is also a very good football player. And when you look at those guys and you see how they play, they're very physical. So one of the things that Michigan's offensive line is going to have to do is to match that physicality. They're going to have to play low. They're going to have to get good movement up front, and they're going to have to be able to block movement. Those guys move around quite a bit. So it's going to be a huge challenge for this Michigan run game.
Just one more question on the Michigan defense, too, John. Of course, we saw what Indiana did on the ground on Saturday. It was just amazing what Minnesota did a couple of weeks ago. I've heard a lot of people say the big difference on that Michigan defensive line this year, even though we have depth and we've had some players really improving, is Ryan Glasgow in the middle. Missing him, is it that big of a hole?
It is. Whenever you take a senior out, a guy that's a leader up front, and a guy that's had the season that he's had, all of a sudden you take him out of the mix. And it's not necessarily that you miss him altogether. It's the fact that now you've got to put other guys out of position. I know Willie Henry has played in there, Wormley, Taco Charlton. All of a sudden you've got guys that are playing in there, and they're good players, but they're out of position. Now all of a sudden, instead of having, just one spot that's struggling, if you move a guy from another spot, whether it's DN, D tackle, what have you, all of a sudden, instead of having, just one spot, now you've got two guys that are out of position and maybe a backup in there and one of them. And it kind of weakens you across the board. So they're going to have all of those guys become very familiar with playing all three spots up front. And then when it comes down to it as well, I want to see that buck linebacker, the guy who's, sometimes a defensive end, sometimes an outside linebacker. He's going to have to be a little more disciplined and a little more aggressive in how he plays. You look at Royce Jenkins-Stones, James Ross, Lawrence Marshall. Those are the guys that you've got in that position that have to be very disciplined in how they play the game of football.
Well, a final question for you, John. In August, if anyone would have told us that Michigan would be 8-2 heading into the last two games, I think most of us would have said, I'll take it. Whatever happens in the next 2 weeks, Jim Harbaugh has already changed the mindset, the expectations, and the culture of the program, hasn't he?
He really has. And, that's a great thing about, doing what you and I do and being able to talk about Michigan football. And you look back even just a year ago, we're talking about, is the AD going to be here? Is the coach going to be here? And are we even going to possibly make a bowl game? Now we're talking about we're relevant in the Big Ten. We're relevant in the national scene. Hopefully as we continue to move forward, now we're going to have to replace the quarterback position again next year. But, Jim Harbaugh and everybody else is going to be familiar with all the other positions and what's going on. We're not going to lose a whole lot of players. But now instead of having to, try and find out who that quarterback is going to be, we're going to be able to pick and choose a little bit from some of the guys that are starting to grow up in the system.
Our guest here on our Michigan Game Day edition this week as we looked back at Indiana on Saturday and ahead to Penn State this coming Saturday has been Michigan great Jon Jansen. John, always great to have you on the show with your insight, and we look forward to our next visit.
Sounds good. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Go Blue.
Some closing thoughts for today are next on Wolverine Quick Hits, here on The Michigan Man, on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, we'll wait until Thursday's show for an injury update. That's when Coach Harbaugh usually has a better idea of who's good to go or not. At his presser on Monday, Harbaugh said Rudock, Chesson, Darboh, and Butt were playing as well as anyone in the Big Ten. Rudock and Chesson were named the co-Big Ten Offensive Players of the Week on Monday. Jim said he has full confidence in Jake Rudock to make and call plays. He said he looks at Jake and says, "I want to be more like him." Harbaugh said that 5 of the 6 false starts on Saturday were mental, and the 6th was Joe Bolden just mistiming a blitz. He said the defense has identified something when it comes to stopping the run game, but did not elaborate. He also mentioned that Brian Monet might be ready to play before the end of the season. With Ryan Glasgow done for the year, he might be needed at some point. Jim isn't sure that will happen, though. He said his team is not tired, is mentally tough, and is ready for this 2-game stretch. On Thursday's Visitors segment, we'll get the Penn State perspective on this week's big game. My guest will be Nittany Lion play-by-play voice Steve Jones, so don't forget to come back on Thursday for that. Like us on Facebook at The Michigan Man Podcast, follow us on Twitter at The Michigan Man, where you can also follow Wolverine Sports Radio at Go Blue Radio. My phone lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or you can email me at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. Some of our listeners are asking why we haven't been covering basketball, hockey, or other fall sports. I wish we had the time. Keeping up with football takes every minute right now, and that is what most of you want to hear about. In a couple of weeks, though, when the regular season ends, I promise we will pick up on the other sports, and I look forward to that. That's it for today. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Please join us again on Thursday for our Visitors Edition with Penn State Radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones. Until then, have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!